Episode 190, Exercise. True wisdom is born when good advice is put into practice.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
You have successfully killed another week of your life. God, what a destructive introduction to the very best podcast in the world. Your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. Now, I didn't really mean to be that destructive, or did I? I honestly don't know. But the point is about, have you used your week as productively as possible, getting back to yesterday's episode, which was about productivity versus appearing to be busy. And I think that was worth starting off with that, because I know that, from reading a lot of, online discussions and motivational groups and, coaches and whatnot, kind of involved in all of them. And one of the recurring themes is that shitloads of people are battling more or less successfully procrastination as a result of, not being able to leave their house, right, in these weird times. And, from not being able to go to the gym, not being able to go outside for a run in some places, even without, some tyrant asking you for the reason that you're being outside, or, you're allowed to go for a run until midnight, but only alone. Yeah. That's really, really, really a good idea for all of those single ladies out there, because all of those rapists really care about curfews. So with nothing to do except, getting up in the morning, clicking yourself as available on your, Microsoft Teams or, your Jabber client or whatever, then slurping your first cup of coffee and, fluffing to the bathroom to take a shit because nobody's going to call you anyhow, because everybody's in home office, dedicating time to their kids and, really taking time. There's no real motivation anymore, right? There's no fucking motivation to, make something out of yourself, from the waist down, because nobody sees it on your Zoom camera, right? So what's the point of going to the gym? And there's no real motivation in making great food, or, having great food, because you've fucking forgotten how great food tastes because all of the restaurants were closed for a fucking year, So half of your friends have died off because of this, fucking polarized world. And, no, you're a conspiracy theorist because you don't believe in science. Well, the fucking science is being ass raped, as you say the sentence, and all of those kind of things, right, have led to really shitloads of people suffering from procrastination. And those of you who are loyal subscribers will remember that we did a 3-part episode on how to successfully combat and getting out of this cycle of procrastination. So I may direct you back to episode 91 to 93, which was this 3-part episode. But since we're talking about previous episodes, it's time for housekeeping. Thoughts are my own, yada, yada, yada. And sharing is caring. So, if you have among those folks of yours, of those friends that are left and in your political camp, whatever, share, these episodes with them, because it's, it's gotten shitloads of positive feedback. And I think it's helped, thousands of people probably, because, this episode was kind of one of the most successful ones that I ever put out there. Now, that being said, you can share all other episodes, of course. Also, welcome to do that. You can do so through your favorite podcast app that you're listening this episode on right now. There's a share button, or you can go to theverybestpodcastintheworld.com, and under each and every episode, there's a share button majiggers that you can, use whatever social medium that, is your fave, and then just hit share, and there we go. So that being said, so today's episode is about true wisdom and how it's born when good advice is put into practice. And there we go. All right. How are we going to combine the two? Well, being motivated and getting out of procrastination is really one of these recurring themes nowadays, because a lot of people are fighting with it. But so is really all of the good advice that's missing out of your social interactions. You may come across quote unquote good advice, speaking of quotes, in all of these motivational majiggers that are being shared on, LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or TikTok and whatnot. Thing is, it's one of these kind of matches igniting, in your motivational bubble, right? It's good advice, and you think, I'm going to act on it. But then the attention span, with everybody doing only videos that are, maximum of 60 seconds, it's like, damn, how in the fuck am I going to remember that I watched this one video or quote, amongst the thousands of pieces of content that you get per day, right? And that's difficult. So, having deep conversations and taking advice out of them is something that is, from my understanding, at risk of being forgotten, right? Because other than in these social media channels where you're just being bombarded with content, these meaningful one-on-one conversations are kind of deteriorating in frequency significantly fast. And that's where I drew a lot of my motivation from, and a lot of good advice was, given to me between the lines, because it's not, somebody comes up to you and says, here's a piece of advice, raising their finger and slamming you with it because he's an old fart and he has got the authority to give you advice. No, advice can be taken out of conversations between the lines, of something that somebody's gone through, for instance, and they tell you about it. And for you not to go through the same, your brain should go like, oh shit, I'm going to save this as advice. So there we are. You get tons of advice, but you kind of subconsciously dig it into yourself. And then, it sits there, it sleeps there, it lives there, but you don't really act upon it. And that's where this episode is, that's where this episode is geared towards. Sorry, bad English. So, in this episode, what we're going to do is to dig in your subconscious mind, maybe even your conscious mind, where you took this advice, which again, doesn't necessarily have to be some old fart waving their elevated finger at you and, whipping you with it because he's got good advice for you. It's about really reading between the lines and from conversations that you've had in the past, and learn and write down on a sheet of paper or in your favorite notes app, 21st century and all, save the trees, and get that written down on a sheet of paper, bullet by bullet. And then, from there, it's really a no-brainer, right? Because then it's like, how do you take this advice and implement it in your life, and how can you move forward upon that? Let me give you an example. Many moons ago, and the loyal listeners of you will, and I hope everybody's loyal, but the loyal listeners will kind of have picked up that I, at a very young age, of a innocent 17, joined the voluntary fire department. And one of my school buddies was actually one of the first emergencies that I attended, quote unquote. And he had, been drunk and hazed up and, totally shit-faced, drove his car, fell off not a cliff, but, kind of like an elevation car land, and the guy died. So that was advice, despite the fact that it was a fucking tragic situation. The guy died, there was a casualty and everything. But for me, that was the point in time where I said, when I drive, I'm not going to do so under the influence whatsoever. So if I know that I got to drive, I'm not even going to have a glass of wine or a beer or whatever. Not one. I'm not going to, pull on the spliff. I'm going to let the spliff walk by me, and so on and so forth. So this was advice that I already executed upon because it was just so fucking tragic. Another thing, is, for instance, a piece of advice that was between the lines was when people exaggerate stuff. So I was working once on a contract, and we got a new chief executive officer, and there were all of these stories about the guy because he'd previously been in the organization. And, they were telling all of these horror stories, all of the other employees. And I started to believe them because, so many people can't be wrong, right? Turns out the guy was a jerk, no, hands down. But most of the things that the staff, the stories they were telling about this dude, the horror stories, were totally exaggerated. And so despite the fact that you have such a figure who may be, a bad person, it's about, kind of reading between the lines and giving them a chance. And that was what I had learned earlier. But due to the fact that everybody was shit talking about him, I was like, oh, well, this is going to be fun. Yet still, it was between the lines, a piece of advice that I kind of learned earlier. Can't even tell you where precisely. And I put that into action of giving the dude a chance. Now, again, I was wrong to give him the chance. The others were right. But still, benefit of a doubt and all. Advice doesn't necessarily have to be positive, right? But it's something you should truly evaluate. A friend of mine, many years ago was bugging me about, now that I kind of semi-retired, to get a degree, an academic degree. And I was like, nah, no, and, I was kind of talking back and, trying to make my point that, for my life, I don't really learn well in academic environments, or scholarly environments or whatever. I learn by doing, and that's not what that is really about. And, anyhow, long story short, I did, after the conversation had ended, we'd gone to bed, and kind of dwelled down and given a lot of thought to that, positives, negatives, yada, yada, yada. Because in the end of the day, despite the fact that he didn't want to say it, it was a piece of advice that he gave me. And you shouldn't turn that down. You should really evaluate, is it a positive or negative? And that's what this episode is about, is every piece of advice that you've gotten and that you have not acted upon. Write that down on a sheet of paper. And after those bullets, write down ways how important it, how life-changing it could be, how much wisdom it could add to your life. And then make an action plan, if you say, okay, holy shit, this could be really life-changing. Then act upon that. Draw out a plan and really, really, really act upon that. And again, there's no time limit on this. If you're in your 40s, 50s, whatever, your life expectancy on average in the Western world is, late 70s, early 80s. So there's tons of time to go around. Yeah, you've gotten a bit slower, but you've also gotten shitloads of experience along the way. So it levels the playing field just a little bit. But you know where I'm getting to. So taking a sheet of paper, digging in your mind, about every piece of advice. Could be as cheap as a meme that you saw somewhere, could be as cheap as a video that you saw on LinkedIn, but could be something insanely meaningful, like a very deep conversation that you have gone into. And to write all of that stuff down and to prioritize it, what impact will it have on my life if I execute upon this? And based thereon, on your prioritization, it's about really drawing down an action plan and how quickly you can implement it and how you can implement it at all, if that even works in your life. So in that sense, I hope I made sense and hope you have a good weekend jotting down all of that stuff. And I look forward to being back together with you on Monday. If you haven't subscribed, please do so now in your favorite podcasting app so that on Monday we can talk about, I don't know yet, but I'm thinking about, doing like a philosophical Monday. Let me know whether that's of interest. And when you write to the very best podcast in the world at gmail.com. Until your email, I shall, bid you farewell and a nice weekend. And we'll be in touch on Monday to a totally fucking awesome, psyched out new week. See you soon, folks.